Good evening. Welcome to KQED Newsroom. I'm Thuy Vu. On tonight's show, Silicon Valley's diversity problem. For years, tech companies have said they're trying to fix it. Now they're under increasing pressure to show progress. Next week, the Congressional Black Caucus will meet with Apple, Google, Intel, and other firms to press them to diversify their workforces. We're going to look at one aspect of this problem, the gender gap. Yahoo's Marissa Mayer, Facebook's Sheryl Sandberg, Google's Ruth Porat. These high-powered female tech executives are the exception, not the rule, in Silicon Valley. At the companies where they work and throughout the valley, women are underrepresented. At Yahoo, women make up 37% of the workforce. At Facebook, 32% of the employees are female. At Google, 30% of workers are women. Most software engineers in Silicon Valley are men, and so are most of the executives. We asked some women what it's like to work in that male-dominated world.
My name is Ayori Selassie. I'm a solution engineer.
My name is Emma Kolner. I'm a software engineer at Stitch Fix.
My name is Zoe Madden-Wood, and I'm a software engineer.
I am coding in a language called Ruby. There's a web framework called Rails. And so you might hear the term Ruby on Rails.
I learned Python recently, and I even dabbled with C, which is a very old and low-level language.
And the services that I can provide range from consulting and advising around how to use technology to build solutions, all the way down to actually building out your first prototype.
I did a few computer science classes in college, but the experience was kind of alienating. The courses were 90% male.
I looked around at the people who already knew programming, and they were so much more advanced. And I didn't think that I could ever catch up.
I hated it, actually, which is a shame because I actually love to program. It was just the way the system was set up.
I got into technology because my mom made me. My mom is just a really very smart, wonderful, incredible woman. Very ambitious. She raised 8 kids on her own, and she could see, she was very forward-thinking, and so she could see that technology was going to run the world. And she gave me a software book, programming book. She's like, you're going to do this every day till you figure it out.
The first person who asked me if I wanted to be a software engineer was at a Women Who Code event, and she's like, she kind of nudged me, and she's like, do you want to be a software engineer? Are you thinking about it? And I'm like, yeah. And I very begrudgingly admit it. And she's like, yes.
Women are half the population of the world, and we need to make sure that they have their part in creating the technology that's going to make the world better for everyone, including women.
But the joke is that in tech, at least 5 to 10% of your time, if you're a woman, is being a woman. And it's because you have to figure out how to be a woman in a male-dominated environment.
Now, in hindsight, I definitely realized there were lots of obstacles. There were lots of incidents that I just chose to ignore.
I felt like I had to work much harder to kind of get noticed for my work. I have to work harder to figure out how to interrupt people but be really polite about it.
I'm always keenly observing when I say, no, I'm actually a software engineer, and you can see them for a split second going like, oh, that's cool. And it's always like a positive reaction, but there is that like moment of surprise.
Women are interrupted more than men, and I felt that, and nobody notices it. And so if you bring it up, you are bringing up something that nobody's noticed before, and it's a very weird conversation to have.
There are a lot of other diversity issues that might be even more problematic, like where all the old people go.
The secret in hiring more women is keeping the ones that you have. A lot of women want to work with other female software engineers. Nobody wants to be the first engineer out of 20 who's a woman.
I want to ask our panel now about what they just heard. Joining me are Rupa Dachere, founder of CodeChicks.org, a nonprofit dedicated to increasing the number of women engineers. Sophy Lee, head of engineering at Shuddle, a ride-sharing service for parents and children. and Cecilia Stallsmith, an associate at Bessemer Venture Partners. Welcome to you all. I want to ask you about that video. We heard about retention. We heard about trying to figure out how to be a woman in a male-dominated world. Did any of those messages resonate with you, Rupa?
Absolutely. All of them resonated. One of the things that I'm trying to do with Code Chicks is address the retention problem. According to statistics as of 2013, there is a 56% dropout rate for women engineers from industry. And lately there's been a lot of focus on the pipeline issue, as in, getting more women to come into the industry, but not as much focus on the women that are already in there and that are leaving and the reasons for their leaving. So this is a very, very important topic, as you just saw.
And Sophie, you're head of engineering at Shuddle. What part of that video resonated with you, and how do you retain women?
I mean, the part of the video that resonated most with me is that there was even a video. I feel like the very fact that the three of us are sitting there and we saw three awesome women talk about their experiences, for me, showed that we're at this really exciting turning point where women are now getting recognized and are now starting to enter the engineering field. And as for how to retain women, I mean, I think it's really about how do you retain people. Women are people just like everyone else. I think if you're able to create a team environment where everybody is recognized and given a chance to voice their opinions and listened to, you're naturally going to be able to keep the women.
And Cecilia, did you feel notes of familiarity there as you watched the video?
Sadly, yes. We speak to a lot of founders every week. I meet with probably 20 to 30 founders a week, and I hate to say a small number of those people are usually women. Sometimes I'll go a week and not see a female founder at all. And I think part of that is that frequently founders are technical, and there are less women in engineering, so it's just a problem we need to solve.
So then how do you solve that? When you're considering investing in a company, how important is diversity to you? Do you ask them, are there women on your leadership team?
Yeah, and it's actually something I'll frequently not ask, but there will be a slide in a pitch deck that says, here's our team. And when I see a team that's only male executives, especially only white male executives, I actually will make a mental note of, wow, this team doesn't seem to be thinking about diversity in the same way. I know that there is a pipeline problem, and I know that that's also not an excuse, but it's something we do factor in.
So then how do you address that? Because if you see a slide and it's all males, do you say to them, you need to have a female executive, or have you interviewed any females for this job?
We won't put them on the spot like that in a pitch meeting usually, but when you're going to invest, you spend a lot of time with a team. It's a relationship that's going to exist for at least 3 years, probably closer to 7 or 10. So as you get to know them, you spend time with them, you have dinners, and then you kind of address diversity issues and talk about what are you looking to build in a team? What are your priorities in your culture? And then you really understand the cultural pillars that make up a company, and can say, okay, this is going to be a place where all people are going to be welcome, or this team feels really closed and it might suffer as a result.
Sophie, women make up half of your engineering team at Shuddle, which is pretty astounding, because most high-tech companies, they hover around 70-30, right? 70% males, 30% female.
Maybe.
Tell us.
Maybe.
Maybe, yes, yes.
Usually well below 20%.
Okay. Well, tell us about your hiring process, and how did you get it to 50%?
I mean, so to reach the kind of diversity that we were able to have at Shuddle, I think the thing about diversity is that when you see it as just like a benchmark to hit, that's not going to do it. I think the important thing is to see diversity, to understand why diversity is so important, right? If you have a room full of people that everybody is the same, everybody is a white male, you're going to end up with a very one-dimensional product and a very one-dimensional company. So starting out with the why and understanding why diversity was important was the first important thing with our hiring strategy at Shuddle. The second thing is it's typical to hire people that you're friends with. I mean, you want to work with people who are just like you. But that's not going to work, because the world isn't full of people who are just like you. So taking it from that perspective, it's about being uncomfortable and trying to meet people, go to events, find new circles of people who are just not like you. So I think getting uncomfortable was the second step.
That's very interesting. Cecilia alluded to this earlier, the pipeline problem. We keep on hearing about that, right? We need more women and girls in STEM, for example. But Rupa, how much of the gender gap is actually a pipeline problem, and how much of it is more a problem with a workplace culture that is perhaps not friendly to women?
They're actually two separate issues. The pipeline problem is more on the girls, middle school, high school, college graduation rates, and also graduation within the STEM areas. So that's one issue that is a problem. It's being dealt with at a federal level with a lot of federal funding towards those initiatives. There is a completely separate problem for workplace culture and why talented women who've been in the industry for many years are leaving the industry. And some of those issues are related to advancement, promotions, the type of work that they do. Usually you will hear things like, oh, women need extra work-life balance because they have, family responsibilities, etc. That has actually not been the key point for women leaving. It's the Anita Borg Institute did a study on this, and they came out with almost 70% of the women leave because they say they're not getting promoted, they're not getting the good projects to do the good work, to showcase themselves and get ahead in their careers. So that itself is one of the issues. So at Coachix, we're trying to address the skill problem. When somebody's in industry and working full-time, you're very focused on whatever it is you're working on, so you're developing skills just in that. In the meantime, outside, the industry is going at like a breakneck speed with new skills, new technologies, new tools coming out. And to keep up with that is extremely difficult, especially for women who have families they have to take care of, full-time job, just not enough hours in the day to do that.
So that gets to the skills issue, but what about the greater workplace culture issue that you talked about? How do you go about fixing that, Cecilia?
I think it's doable. So I don't think that cultures are set in stone. They're something that's fluid and dynamic. They're made up of people. We create a culture when we sit in this room together. So it's something that I think, Sophie, you pointed out really well, and just addressing the why at first, and then addressing getting uncomfortable, and actually talking about it as a company. One of our investments, we were really early investors in Pinterest, and they've done a ton recently around improving diversity. They're doing bias training for their managers. It's unheard of. They're basically taking their managers and saying, okay, take a test. Now let's see that you have biases against these kinds of people. So when you're interviewing them, be aware of that. Watch out that you interrupt them too early. Watch out that you're not sort of seeing them through and are positioning yourself against them, even though they might be just as qualified as someone else who's more similar to you.
Well, speaking of Pinterest, they released their diversity goals this week,
yeah.
And one of the things they discuss is the so-called Rooney Rule, and the NFL already does this, where you interview at least one person from an underrepresented group or one female for a leadership position. Is that something that you think should be happening at all tech companies?
It would be amazing if it did. I think that it's a great rule to have. What's hard is, when we do this, you want to find a female board member for a company. There are people who say that that's a bad way to approach the problem. Go find the people who are the most qualified and get them in the room and hire the best one. Trying to sort of hire for a specific demographic doesn't make sense. But I think it's a great thing to do, personally. What do you guys think? Like, does that help?
I think it's going to be really, really hard to find, a female representative for whatever XYZ position that you're trying to fill, because there just aren't that many. Especially if,
I would
if you're,
disagree.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of qualified women.
I would totally disagree. I think that the reason why there's a perception that there's not enough, not that many female engineers, is that our social circles tend to stay kind of static. And so we look at our social circles and say, out of the, 200 people I regularly interact with, this many are female engineers. There are 7 billion people in the world. To make it a little bit more concrete, I just went to a conference early in the year called Lesbians Who Tech, and it's an even more finely grained segment of kind of women in tech. we filled the entire Castro Theater. So there were like 3,000 of us in this theater. And you look around and you realize there are totally women in tech. I'm just not looking in the right places. That was really a wake-up call for me.
I do want to ask you this question about startups, since you work in the world of funding startups. Many startups say survival is an absolute priority, and not so much diversity, because they're just trying to fight to save their companies. What do you say to them?
Depends on what stage. And if you are a 3-person startup, diversity is great, but when you're adding a 4th, there's only so much that you could do. You're trying to hire desperately. Your problem is not who do I choose? Your problem is who can I please get to join me, who's going to be good enough to build this company with us. So if you're really, really early stage, I think it depends on your network. I actually think what you said about the conference that you went to and realizing there are all these women in tech who are great, it's a problem of who you know. So a lot of the engineers that I know are male, and I have a couple of female engineers, and I know they'll lead me to more. So if I'm intentional about building my network in women, then I'll find more. So I think that if they're early stage, they do what they got to do. It's survival, as you said. If it's later stage and you're passing the 50-person mark, I hope that you have someone there who's talking about it and who cares. I think that the first step is really just empathy and understanding that this is a real problem on our hands that we need to solve to make our company better. So thinking about culture is the priority there.
So empathy is one thing, giving it some thought is another thing, but how optimistic are you that real change will happen? Companies have been promising for years that they will diversify their workforces. The numbers haven't really moved. I mean, HP has been releasing its data for more than a decade. It was about 30% of its worldwide workforce in 2002 were women. 10 years later, 2012, it was 32%. The needle didn't move much. Do you think that real change will indeed come this time?
I'm optimistic.
Me too.
And let me tell you why, Twee. Like I said, the fact that this conversation is happening makes me so excited. And it's making me realize that if we want that change to happen, it's going to be up to each of the 3 of us on the panel right now to extend this conversation just beyond this interview, to talk to the people we are able to talk to because of the positions that we're in. So in that sense, if it's in our power, I think these women are incredible, and I'm very optimistic for the future.
Rupa, are you optimistic?
I am cautiously optimistic, I would say. There is something, there are different pieces, like as I was talking about the girls and the women in college, the expectations that they are given regarding the industry may not be as accurate as they should be, in my opinion. There is a certain degree of what I call background radiation that exists particularly in engineering, all across.
What do you mean by that?
Culture issue, advancement issues, these are all, you just deal with it when you're coming into the industry. And usually when you're in college, you're not told about these things. Nobody's going to tell you this, right? You come into industry and then you learn, oh, wait, all this stuff goes on which I'd never learned about, right? So I call it like kind of background radiation. And some of it, everybody has to deal with it, whether you're female or male. You have to deal with it. Okay. And I think just understanding that, being able to cope with it and to really focus on the good things and how technology can really help and advance your career, make you financially stable, and just you can build really cool things that you can't do in most other fields. Come on, right? So I am certainly cautiously optimistic about it. Yeah.
And we will leave it then on that cautiously hopeful note. Thank you very much. Rupa Dachere with Coachix, Sophy Lee with Shuddle, and Cecilia Stallsmith with Bessemer Venture Partners. Pleasure to have you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Are Uber drivers employees or independent contractors? That question is currently before a federal court. A small group of former drivers have sued Uber, claiming they should have been classified as employees. Next week, the court will hear arguments on whether the suit can be expanded to include many, if not all, of the company's 160,000 U.S. drivers. The case could have a big impact on the so-called sharing economy. Our colleague at PBS NewsHour Weekend, Hari Srinivasan, spoke with Arun Sundararajan. He's a professor of management science at New York University.
How these companies define themselves matters certainly in a court of law and also in the court of public opinion. Are these platforms? Are they delivery companies? Are they companies with employees? Are they just enabling freelancers?
So we're sort of somewhere in the middle of, like, sort of the market and the hierarchy, so to speak. And digital technology has sort of over the decades sort of defined new institutional and organizational forms. I think we just need to recognize that this is a new form of organizing economic activity that has some of the characteristics of a hands-off market and some of the characteristics of a corporation.
So is Uber a car service or a tech company?
It's somewhere in between, right? I mean, it's certainly a tech company, but to say that it's purely a matching platform seems to sort of a little disconnected from reality. On the other hand, to say that it's a $50 billion car service also seems a little disconnected from the reality of the fact that it is, at its core, a platform that matches independent drivers with people sort of seeking a ride. It's just doing it with a lot of the layers that we traditionally associate with a corporate car service.
And joining me now to discuss the Uber case is Wall Street Journal technology reporter Douglas MacMillan. Doug, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you broke some news today regarding Uber. It just closed its latest round of funding. It's now valued at nearly $51 billion. How significant is that?
Well, it's a very big number. It's only one of 2 venture-backed private tech companies to ever achieve that valuation. The other, of course, being Facebook. The other interesting thing that Uber's done here is it got to that valuation faster than Facebook. Facebook did it in just under 7 years. Uber is now 5 years old. And so it's a pretty astounding kind of feat for this company that wasn't around just 5 years ago.
It is extraordinary. So in the case that we just talked about, should the drivers be contractors or employees, is this company, Uber, now valued at nearly $51 billion, arguing that it can't afford to classify its contractors, its drivers, as employees?
Well, I think that what's happened is that this is one of many companies in this kind of sharing economy that's employing these contractors that these questions are around. But Uber is the most mature company. They have over 200,000 drivers, and they have the most at stake in this battle. If Uber were forced to reclassify all of these drivers who are now contractors to become employees, that would add huge costs for this company. Estimates have ranged anywhere between 20 to 40% of their costs would increase. Would Uber have to then pass that cost on to customers, take that out of the pocket of drivers? Something fundamental would have to change with Uber's business model, and they are now, as you said, so valuable and so kind of far along that would, be a major obstacle for growth for this company. So, they're not explicitly arguing that, but that's kind of what's at stake for this company.
But meanwhile, you have reported on this. Other on-demand service companies have reclassified their contractors as employees. We've got the car parking service Lux. We've got Instacart, Ship. Why did they decide to make that move?
Yeah, well, 2 reasons. I think these companies, unlike Uber, are very early in their business models, and there is still time to kind of rejigger things and kind of reframe their business models around an employee model. And 2, what these companies are getting out of this, I talked to the CEO of Lux just earlier this week, and he told me that they can now kind of do more things with employees that they could not with contractors. For Lux, it's these on-demand valet parkers. They can now set their schedules. They can now give them more hands-on training, and they can kind of give them more specific direction that they could not do with their contractor workforce.
And they're small and nimble enough to do it at this stage.
Right. It's worth making that change now because you don't want to deal with that uncertainty down the road of being forced to do this change.
Are you hearing any discussion among executives at these types of on-demand service companies about perhaps finding a new way to extend employee benefits, somewhere between contractor and employee status, perhaps?
Yeah, we're hearing that from investors and at the companies themselves. We're also increasingly hearing it from regulators and in kind of the national conversation. Senator Mark Warner out of Virginia has been one of the first national politicians to discuss this idea of, technology and these online marketplaces have created a new type of worker. And technology has kind of moved faster than regulation in this area. So should we come up with a new classification, a new type of worker. Some people have called it the dependent contractor, where essentially you're acknowledging that these people are not going to stick with one company, they're not going to work a certain shift, but that they should have some fundamental benefits like workers' comp, like unemployment benefits that perhaps could be paid out of some kind of collective pool. So yes, there is definitely a new behavior and a new class of worker. Whether or not governments and regulations should step forward and recognize that kind of is still a matter of debate.
Uber is also facing another legal battle in California. The State Public Utilities Commission wants to fine the company more than $7 million and suspend its service if the company doesn't turn over data on riders. What specific data regarding ridership does the state want to see?
So several different things. They're looking for kind of point A to point B, which customers are taking trips, when and where. They're also looking for kind of data about accessible vehicles and to what extent Uber is getting requests and fielding requests for accessible vehicles. And there's some other things that the state of California is looking for. And basically they're saying that, Uber, we made a deal with you, a couple years ago that we would create regulations to protect you and your specific kinds of vehicle as, regulation. You're not upholding your end of the bargain by giving us enough data. I think that this is going to be a growing story with Uber as it begins to become a legalized entity and as, Uber becomes protected under a lot of laws in many of the jurisdictions where it operates. It's now going to have the challenge of compliance, and how do you make sure that the regulators in 50 different states are all happy with the data that you're giving them and the deals that you struck with them. I think California is kind of at the forefront of this, and we're going to see if these headaches extend to other places with Uber.
Well, it's certainly already spending a lot of money on lobbying in California. It's already in the top 3% of companies in the amount of money it spends. Just real quickly, are there some top myths about the ride-sharing economy or the sharing economy in general that we should know about?
Well, one, I think it's this myth that it's all kind of mom and pops and that it's all the guy next door driving you or renting you a place on Airbnb. I think that these online marketplaces, they move towards formality and they move towards industry, and you're going to see more and more businesses emerge around these marketplaces.
And they do it very quickly. All right. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining all of us. For all of KQED's news coverage, please go to kqednews.org. I'm Thuy Vu. Have a great night.